Hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippi, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And just last night, you saw my raw reaction to it. The Minnesota Twins out of the postseason. It was a really heartbreaking way to end that season after how many amazing things we've seen from the Twins so far in the playoffs, and just they really got our hopes up, and we just couldn't quite get the job done. But and on the other side of things, the Vikings are doing bad right now with Justin Jefferson also on the IR. The Wolves we know are going to be mediocre like they always are. But there is a light shining. I was kind of late to recording this because you'll be definitely seeing this after the Wild game has started because it's literally on the verge of starting right now. So I'm a little late to this, but still doing a preview of the Wild because this is a team that definitely can get the job done for the state of Minnesota, and they're going to be another fun team to watch this year. And we'll see, can they make it to the playoffs again? Can they make it past that first round? We'll have to find out. But that's what's nice about sports is that when one team ends and one season comes to a close, there's always another team season right around the corner. And if you're a fan of all four sports like I am, it's so nice to be able to just try and forget the pain of the one sport and move on to the next one, especially because the Wild are at least going to be a team worth watching this year. Whether or not they are a team that makes the playoffs, it remains to be seen, but we'll make some of those predictions in this video. So first, to recap last season, the Wild lose in 6 games to the Stars, just a really rough way to end the season after thinking maybe, if there's any team that can maybe get past this hump, and we weren't able to do it. It was a really fun team to watch. And a lot of those guys are going to be back this year, but we did lose a lot of guys. First of all, the key additions that we had. This one not quite as key. Vinny Lettieri. He was just kind of a depth guy that we signed. He's not going to be on any of our starting lines tonight. But one of the two pickups that we made, which is kind of sad that he's one of the notable ones. And then Pat Maroon, he is going to be in our lineup this first game of the season. He's one of those guys where he's not going to be a star, but it's always nice to have someone like him on the team. He has some Stanley Cup playoffs experience, and he's going to be a guy that can slot in at different positions and fill the needs we need, especially with Spurgeon being out to start off the season, which will be a big factor for us. And then we got our key losses. Matt Dumba, he had run his course here. He was not playing well. He kind of left his teammates out on an island a little bit too much. Nyquist, who we got back from an injury just a little bit before the playoffs started, and he didn't end up doing a whole lot for us. Sundqvist was actually pretty good. He ended up signing with Seattle or St. Louis, excuse me. But he was decent for us, a good depth guy, and helped us a little bit in the playoffs as well. Sam Steele was a little bit of a tough one to lose, and then Ryan Reeves, who was really our muscle besides Foligno last year, he left, as well as John Klingberg. So some depth guys, some pieces that we added for our run last year, we got rid of, and I think it's just kind of a move where we were like, okay, let's dump these guys that we acquired for our push last year, and then we'll see if we need to get more guys this trade deadline. We'll see. Hopefully, we are good enough to be able to try and make another push as well this year, as the Wild are lining up and the first face-off of the season is underway. So I'm officially late to be uploading this video, but those are the players we lost this last season. And so on paper, we're a worse team than we ended last season as, but it's never that black and white. We could end up being a good deal worse than last season. We could honestly exceed expectations because there's young guys that come up, and also just players play differently from year to year. That's the obvious truth. So going into the Wild depth chart, going into this first game of the season, Kirill Kaprizov, obviously, Ryan Hartman and Matt Zuccarello make up one line. And then we have Johansson, Eriksson Ek, Boldy, Foligno, Rossi, Goudreau, and then Duhaime, Dewar, Maroon on that fourth line. Fourth line looking a little bit suspect to start off the season, but a couple guys on that line that can end up being some breakout players for us. And then on the defensive side, we have Brodin and Faber on the defensive side. Middleton and Goligoski, we got to keep Middleton this year. John Merrill and Kalen Addison on that other defensive line. And then, of course, our goalies, Philip Gustafson and Marc-Andre Fleury. So Marc-Andre Fleury at this point is going to be our goalie that will come in for a certain amount of games this season. He's going to play. He's just not our premier goalie anymore. Gustafson has taken over that role as Fleury is now 38 years old. He's getting up there in age, and he's just going to become more of the complementary role, which he's a good goalie to have in a complementary role, if you ask me. But those roles really shifted towards the end of last season after a really rough postseason game by Marc-Andre Fleury. I think it was game 2 where he really screwed the pooch a little bit. But also, I remember that game really not being too much his fault. But anyway, let's get into some of these key questions going into this season. And the first one was last year. The Wild went from being a top 10 offense to a bottom 5 bottom 5 offense. They were 26th best offense and bottom 10 in a lot of categories, but their defense just shot up the roof. But the question is, the Wild really suffered that loss of offense because in part to the loss of Fiala last year, and the fact was we needed someone to step up last year if we were going to make a deep playoff run, and a couple players did do that. Boldy did it a bit, and the question now is, can Ryan Hartman bounce back after he had a really good season couple seasons ago, and then he had a really rough one last season. He did make a pretty big play in game 1 of that playoff series, but he really had a rough year in general. So can he bounce back? And then we've got players like Faber and Rossi. Can they step up and be that guy for the Wild and kind of contribute more to this scoring? Because, again, the Wild had such a great defensive season last year, and if all goes well, we'll have another one this year. But we need a little more support. It feels like kind of the same thing as the Twins, but we're going to need a little more help for Gustafson if he's going to be able to carry us throughout the playoffs. Because we do know goalies win Stanley Cups sometimes, but you need the offense to back that up. At least if the Wild can somehow crack their way into a top 20 offense or even make their way into top 15, then with our defense, we become Stanley Cup caliber. But also, it's very possible we stay at that level of offense that we were last year, even get worse, in which case it's going to be kind of shaky for us. So could go a lot of different ways based off of that. And the second question plays right into that. Can Philip Gustafson maintain the level of success that he had last season? You know, Gustafson came into that season, everyone was expecting him to have a decent season, and it was more supposed to be Fleury that was going to carry us, and Gustafson was just going to kind of see how it went. And Gustafson completely took this team and the league by storm, had one of the better, goalie performances all season long, and he was great in the playoffs as well. The question, and him being good in the playoffs was a much more comforting sign that he could potentially maintain this and be that good of a goalie as he continues to go forward, because we've got some good goalies coming up from the lower levels for the Wild, but they're not ready quite yet. So Gustafson has to be the guy for us this year. He's going to have to continue to be just as good this year if we're going to be able to continue to be a good team, get a division spot or even get a wild card spot and potentially try and compete for a championship this year. And then finally, the third, the Wild last year really suffered from not having a number one center, and that made us suffer both on the offense and defensive side of things, because the defense, the one hole on defense was that center play, and it really left both Gustafson and Fleury out on an island out there for a lot of 2-on-1s and a lot of things like that in the playoffs. So the question is, can someone step up in that position again, or will it be the same story this year? So a lot of key questions, and I think a lot of those questions are similar to last year. It's just last year the question was, can Gustafsson hold his own enough for the Wild to be good? This year it's, can Gustafsson be the reason why we win games again, or are we going to have to find that in some other way? So I'm going to go into a little bit of prediction mode here. You got the Avalanche and the Stars for the top three in this division. And then after that, you've got the Blues. The Coyotes aren't going to do anything. The Blackhawks are now 1-1 after, everyone went crazy with Bedard winning that first game, but then they lost to the Bruins. They're not going to be quite good enough, I don't think, to make a playoff run or even push for the wild card this year. The Coyotes are not going to be good. The Blues, I don't think so either. They got rid of a lot of guys last year. The Predators, you never know with them. I feel like they always just underperform their expectations. And then the Winnipeg Jets are a team where I feel like they have kind of higher expectations than people should have for them, because I think that they made some moves, but I think they're still a little bit overrated this year. So, and then you look at the other side of things. You look at the wild card potentially, because you've got the Knights, you've got the Kraken, the Oilers, the Kings, and the Flames. So those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that are going to be good this year. And I'm kind of afraid of all of those teams potentially when it comes to taking some wildcard spots away. So all this to say, I think that if the Wild are going to make the playoffs this year, it's got to be through the division. I think we have to beat out Nashville, Winnipeg. Honestly, I think those are the main two that we're going to have to beat out in our own division, get that third spot, and compete for the playoffs, because I think there's too many good teams in the Pacific side of things that are going to kind of eat up those wild card spots. I'm really afraid of that. But my prediction is that the Wild will get that third spot. I think we're going to be a slightly worse team than we were last year. I just don't think there are enough good teams in our division that are going to overtake us. I think we're going to still be able to maintain that third spot in this division, and hopefully a couple of those guys step up for us. We play well enough where maybe a couple moves will be made at the trade deadline. That would be fantastic if we could make that happen and try and compete for another championship. What am I doing? Try and compete for another playoff appearance and maybe potentially even get past the first round. Because again, anything could happen. We didn't think we were going to be a good playoff team last year, and then Gustafsson showed us that we could make that happen. So anything's possible. Keep the faith, Wild fans. Let's cheer on the Wild all season long. Try and get rid of the pain of the Twins losing. And that's all there really is to say. So let me know in the comments what you think. If there's any teams you think will jump over the Wild and if they'll miss the playoffs. Or maybe you have higher expectations for the Wild even than I do. We'll have to see. But thanks so much for watching this one. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. And I'll see you on the flip side.